Great.
Hello, you through the books, boys. You got Dean on the line. Who's calling?
This is Ben Gonshor, the author of the Book of Izzy.
Ah, Ben, fantastic. And the great coincidence because we were just in the middle of chatting about the Book of Izzy. How are you today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. No problem at all. So we read the book. I enjoyed it actually, but I want to ask you something. So I looked at a little bit on your website and you've worked in some theater and things like that. Is this your first full-length novel?
It is.
Yeah.
I've never written long form literature like this before. My previous writing experience is mostly in theater and film. But when I was conceiving of the idea of what eventually became the book, um, it sort of it lent itself to the medium of a long form literature, specifically the novel. There was just so much that I wanted to accomplish with the story that that medium seemed to be the most appropriate. Um, and one of the things that I wanted to do, having written plays and film scripts that haven't been produced, I wanted to write something that I knew that at the end of the day, if I couldn't find people interested in partnering with me to
Mm.
publish them, I could always self-publish. That was never the goal.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know that no matter what, my work could get out into the public.
Sure.
And so that was another reason why long form literature, again, the medium of the novel was what I chose.
Hmm. Okay. So it wasn't that, the typical story you just always wanted to write a novel. Actually, you were working on other shorter things than this just kind of evolved into a novel of its own
Right.
accord, kind of, yeah.
Right.
Do you
Right.
think you'll write another then, or are you going to go back to shorter pieces?
Um, it's a really, really good question. I don't define myself as a novelist.
Sure.
I define myself as a writer who writes in the most appropriate medium that the idea lends itself to. So I found writing the Book of Izzy an incredibly daunting task,
Oh,
uh, simply because every time you finished a chapter, there was another blank page.
yeah, yeah.
And then another, and then another, and then another. And I'm not someone who just, you know, oozes with things that, flow out of me. I deliberate and I get very frustrated and it takes me a long time to get words onto the page. So, for a long time after I wrote the book, I said, I'm done. I'm never doing
Mm.
this again. It was just too darn hard. But interestingly, there's those little voices inside of you that speak to you ever so softly and say, "We've got something." And so I'm listening to those voices who are telling me that there might be another one brewing.
Okay. And I was curious because obviously with yourself working in theater and of course with plays and things and with Izzy eventually ending up directing a play, is there a portion of yourself in Izzy or is he just purely fictional?
Well, I think writers always have a portion of themselves in the characters they create. I don't know how it's possible
Hmm.
not to do that. So certainly, I wouldn't argue with someone saying, is Izzy your alter ego? I think in many ways he probably
Okay.
is. Um, but he is a fictional character, and I think that's important to remember. It is a
Hmm.
work of fiction.
Cool. I find amusing a little bit his relationship with his mum in particular.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not very well, he doesn't talk to his mum the way I would talk to my mum. He swears a lot and he's very aggressive, and she's always like, "Oh, again with this," like the way he's talking to her. And they have a bit of banter, they have a fun kind of relationship with each other, but it's not as much of respect and deference as I would have expected. And of course, she's doing the usual mum thing, trying to like help him get his life together. And there's a funny bit where she comes round to help him with the house and everything. And he's like, "Oh, you're going to complain that all this rubbish is in bin bags, but at least it's in bin bags. It's not lying on the floor, you know." Would you want to get praise for that?
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted Izzy's relationships to be as natural as possible, and I think it's important for your listeners to know that when our story opens, Izzy's going through a mental health crisis.
Yes.
And so throughout the story, he is speaking, and that crisis specifically is that for many reasons he's decided that he wants to go off his psychotropic medications to see if life could be better without them.
Hmm.
And as part of the process of coming off them, he's going through that withdrawal process. And uh, having lived some of that experience myself, I think, and listeners who have this experience as well will appreciate that often when you're going through this, you lose some of the filtering ability that you have as a regular, quote unquote, mature adult when it comes to thinking thoughts and then speaking them.
Yeah.
So part of the reason why Izzy speaks as colorfully as he does is because of what he's going through, but it's also within his character that
Yeah.
what he thinks he shares. And his mother is not just his mother. She's his friend because they both have this experience, this life experience to live with, this mental health, uh, living with mental
Mm.
health issues. And I think where that's concerned, they're more friendly than it is a mother-son relationship
Mm.
because they both experience that together.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, readers appreciate that there is deference to his mother. There is a lot of love there.
Hmm. No, I think so. I think also he's I guess still struggling a little bit with the loss of his father, and there is a line where he kind of says, well, only one person ever really understood me.
His grandfather.
His grandfather, sorry, yeah. So that's the difficulty for him as well. But it's easy to feel for him because you can see that he's having a tough time, and there is, of course, the moment where he has to they ask him to give a speech, and they kind of say, "On here's a gentleman knows all about this and speaks Yiddish and everything," and he just kind of freaks out like in the moment of doing the speech. And I feel bad for him. Like you can see that he's going through a lot, and the empathy for him is built up very, very well. Very effectively.
Thank you. Yeah, it's I didn't know if it would work, frankly.
Mm,
And it I wanted to write about this. I wanted to write about the experience of living on and off psychotropic medications, but I didn't want to write nonfiction in the self-help genre,
mm,
nonfiction, memoir, that type of thing, because there's a lot of it out there, and I don't know that it's really been covered all that much in fiction, and so that's the medium I chose to use to write about it. And I knew it was a risk because I didn't know if the reader would be empathetic or sympathetic to what Izzy is going through. I didn't know if a lot of the coarseness of him going through the experience that he's going through would rub people the wrong way. It might. It might.
mm.
Um, I'm hoping more people than not will appreciate what he's going through, and that his experience will promote conversations. I think that's one
Sure.
of the things I'm hoping that the book allows is for conversations to take place about what is a crisis in our society, which is the mental health crisis that is thankfully becoming more and more front and center and appreciated as a crisis that many, many people are going through in their own ways. And I just wanted to lend something to that conversation.
Hmm. I mean, that certainly seems to be one of the main goals of the book. But another potentially is this theme of, well, we've got to keep or n- maintain, if not revive, like Yiddish theater and the language and all, and the culture and this kind of thing. How important, do you think that message is as well?
I don't know that I wanted to put across the message of how important it is to preserve Yiddish theater. Um, I did want to write about my experience in Yiddish theater, and Yiddish is a Jewish language. I wanted to write about that simply because it has had a profound effect on my life,
Hmm.
and I wanted to share that with people. Um, it's a language that uh, less and less people are speaking with each passing year, and so I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Okay. But not necessarily, it's not the objective of the book as such to promote it. Yeah. No, that's cool. So I suppose the last thing I want to talk about in terms of plot is Sue Ellen and the relationship he eventually gets into, his romantic relationship. That comes about. It caught me a little bit off guard because he didn't seem like he was in a place, obviously coming out of a past relationship he wasn't quite over, and then didn't seem like he was in a place to start a new relationship, but seems, without giving too much away, it seems like it's good for him, I guess.
Yeah, I I think I tied it up with a nice ribbon at the end. But
Hmm.
that being said, I think the jury's still out. We'll see if there's we'll see if there's
Hmm.
another story, if there's a sequel, to see how that works out. But certainly within the confines of the story, Suen is somebody that comes into his life when he gets involved in the Yiddish theater, who makes him look in the mirror and decide for himself, what does he want with his life? And is he satisfied with being miserable forever? Or is he willing to take some risks, regardless of, or in spite of the fear that it might induce? Is he ready to take some risks? Um, because there's a potential for some really nice things to happen. She presents him with that challenge. And he needs to make a choice in our story, whether to accept that challenge.
Hmm. There's one other bit. It's kind of not super relevant, but they there's a bit where they list a bunch of books on someone's shelf as being like, oh, here we go. This is the kind of books this type of person would obviously have. And it's, Anne Ryan. I've got the list here, The Fountainhead. I think there's a biography of Winston Churchill. Mein Kampf is on there, some. And then I was like, okay, check my shelf. Luckily, I didn't have any of these books. And I thought, well, wouldn't mind trying the Leviathan though as a philosophy graduate. But the rest, I was like, yep, do not have any of those. So I check out. I passed the test. No Fountainhead on my bookshelf. Um, I will ask you one or two final questions, but before I do, would you like to just plug your website or tell people where they can get the book?
Yeah, they can certainly go on my website, bengonshore.com. There's a link to Amazon there. The book is available on Amazon pretty well internationally, so that's probably the easiest place to go and get it.
I'll put a link as well in the show notes.
That's
So,
great.
do you know what you're working on next?
Um, I sort of don't. uh, I I keep hearing the voices of the characters from the Book of Izzy speaking to me. And so something tells me that they're telling me that they don't feel their stories are done,
Mm-hmm.
which is a wonderful experience to have as a writer, is to give life to characters who take on a life of their own, so to speak.
Sure. That's what you
They
want.
start, yeah, that's what you want, and they start to breathe on their own, and they're speaking to me, telling me that they'd like some more adventures.
Mm.
So hopefully, the Book of Izzy resonates with enough people that it would give an impetus to create a new adventure for him and
Mm-hmm.
characters in the book.
Hopefully so. Well, the final question then that I ask to everyone that comes on the show is if there's one book in existence that you wish you'd been the person to write, what would it be?
That's a great question. Um, Fiction or nonfiction, or it doesn't really
Whatever,
matter.
whatever you want.
I mean, I'll just speak about fiction. You know, one of the big inspirations for me was the Canadian author, now deceased, Mordecai Richler.
Hmm.
And when I read his book, Barney's Version, uh, in doing research for my book, I believe it was the last book he wrote before he passed away. I said that is my true north.
Mm.
If the Book of Izzy can be anywhere near as good as that, then my cup will have runneth over. So Mordecai Richler's Barney's Version.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Ben, thank you so much for calling in, and we'll put a link, as I say, to the book in the show notes, and we'll chat a little bit about it, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thanks, Dean. I appreciate it. All the best to you.
Take care. Bye bye.